Yeah, obviously we don't write the hot takes for hot takes. We're not allowed to see them beforehand. But
Speak for yourself.
By we I mean myself and TJ. But if this doesn't become a hot take, here's a bonus hot take for you. Adding Cthulhu to your deck makes your deck worse, even if you're playing against exactly Priest or Warlock. That's genuinely my opinion. I don't think adding bad cards to your deck really helps improve you at all.
One sec.
What does improve your win rate?
Got it.
Raven's now submitting that as a hot take. But what does improve your win rate against any deck in the game is drawing Incanter's Flow. And Jarla so far will feel fine. Incanter's Flow #1 coming down for him. He also has Deck of Lunacy in hand. This second one now, along with 0 mana Font of Power from RDU, Raven, it never stops. It's game 1 and I'm already losing my mind because it's been 3 days straight of this.
And Jarla...
Without exaggeration or hyperbole, this has been every game. It's either been Flow, Double Flow, or Lunacy on 4 every single mage game in Europe. It's a statistical anomaly at this point.
So again, I'd just like to remind you, Sol, that we are in Europe. Players play very well in this region. Therefore, there are on average more Incanter's Flow. I will say though, this does get interesting. Jarla could respond with his own 0 mana Font of Power, but now the big question, I think, of today, of this weekend, arguably, is where does Deck of Lunacy fit in the players' choices when they've chosen to bring it, right? So Jarla has Deck of Lunacy. We've seen him do pretty impressive things with it, but in this situation, he's arguably behind because he has seen that second Incanter's Flow. What's the decision? And the decision is Deck of Lunacy for Jarla.
Yeah, completely agree. I think you go. There's a lot of factors to this, right? A lot of things that need considering. First off, Jarla has drawn 0 of his 7-cost spells, so they're all in the deck. He is also discounted with Incanter's Flow, so all of those 7-cost spells are now Libram of Hope. On top of that, RDU doesn't have the option to go Deck of Lunacy, so his plan is limited, right? He has to go Burn Plan. It's the only way he wins the game. Burn Plan's all he's got. So Burn Plan against triple Libram of Hope is a pretty good outcome for Jarla, you would argue. On top of which, RDU hasn't developed a lot of pressure in terms of minions, which can turn you off from playing Deck of Lunacy on turn 4, right? If your opponent's had a very aggressive Font of Power start.
Right.
Jarla took 0 damage there for playing Deck of Lunacy on 4, which is pretty insane. So I think all things considered, very, very good decision from Jarla to go for it there.
Yep. Also, this is pretty key, right? The Mosaic is good, but that Cloak of Shadows for 0 for as and when Jarla decides he needs it could be huge here because it is RDU who's on that burn plan, right? And guess where Fireballs and Apexis Blast want to go in this matchup in general? To the face.
Is he going to double Brain Freeze it so he can still Apexis the face? Yeah, okay, fair enough. Had a lot of talk about this, by the way. This is interesting ordering, let's say, from RDU because he did Apexis Blast in the middle. And you always hear people saying, like, oh, you Apexis Blast first always because of Mizaki or Aegwin, like extra spell damage you can get, right? It's not always the case because there is a downside that people don't talk about, and it's High Abyss Allura, right? Because if you activate that spell burst off your Apexis Blast first and then cast another spell afterwards, and then you just fireball your own minion, you've then not only wasted a fireball but also killed your own 5-drop. There are many more positive outcomes than that, just one negative one. I just like to point out that that is a negative outcome that people don't really discuss when they're talking about ordering with Apexis Blast.
Okay, so a real menagerie of spells here going on for Jarla. Does have that Petting Zoo and a 2-mana Siphon Soul doesn't look too shabby to even just deal with this 4/4 and say, well, you'll gain the heal, you'll get rid of the minion. The only fear is do you think Jarla's, or do you think it is just worth keeping it for something more dangerous? Is there going to be many things more dangerous than this 4/4 right now?
Is there going to be many things more dangerous than this Trick Totem, Raven? That's what you've really got to think about here.
Depends who's playing it, Sol. Mine would have already done something and ruined my game plan already if I was the one playing it.
I like it. I don't think there's any real reason to panic just now. I think this is solid from Jarla. He's just kind of waiting for his deck to hand him something powerful to do, pick up some card draw, wait for himself to really like explode on the board.
There it is.
There it is.
It's a Raven Trick Tome. Yeah, the only thing I was considering, it's easy because Jarla knows Font of Power has been played on RDU's side, but there's some weird worlds that if Jarla waits too long, there might not be a minion to Siphon Soul and gain that extra health from. So it's a small thing, and I'm sure it's something Jarla's aware of, but in this matchup with the way it's going, I really don't think he wants to miss out on this 3 health. Initiation the Trick Totem.
A good pickup for some tempo swing along the way. I mean, I'm sure the other regions are sick of seeing this card already because of just how core it's become to the Priest Mirror now. Like, Priest Mirrors, back when we were casting all the Priest Mirrors last year, it was a game of, rock, paper, scissors, Soul Mirror, Murazond?
Yeah.
Now it seems like a game of rock, paper, scissors, Onyx, Mage, Scribe, Initiation, right? That's the new Priest Mirror meta. And I do not envy the position that the casters of the other regions have been in with those Priest Mirrors.
Yeah, everyone laughed at us back in the day. Now who's laughing?
By the way, if they want any tips, I'm just saying, we were the nuts at casting.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Like,
We're here to have a lot of practice.
Yeah.
But so how many hours have you got in casting Priest Mirrors? 1 million. Here we go though, Jarla does get the initiation down, which means he is presenting a pretty dangerous board himself now. Oh! Oh, okay. Oh! Terrible. Well, that's upsetting for RDU.
A little bit, yeah.
He can still kill it though, right? Varden Snap, right?
Oh, good point. Yeah, very nice.
So if RDU respects it, bear in mind though, Jarla, Deck of Lunacy on curve. RDU isn't expecting to see Fireball, Mask come out in the next couple of turns, right? But maybe it's just enough of a threat anyway.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because how much do you actually value spell damage in terms of burn being thrown at you versus having a Varden in your hand, which can stop, giant boards being a huge threat, which I honestly feel is more likely when you're facing down Deck of Lunacy. Feels like there's more cards that just make stuff and buff them than there are just burn damage being thrown at your face.
Especially when you look at the other options, RDU could have actually just Apex's blasted face and say, let's go. And just kept going in with that kind of thought pattern, but it did choose to be a little bit more defensive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to make the argument, but I think in the end it just does end up being madness, right? Like, it's Mazaki. It's one of the scariest cards in the damn game. It'd be absolutely absurd to leave it alive if you have the option to kill it, I think.
Okay, well, RDU has options now. Whenever you can get this ring toss active, you do have to stare at it. It's just whether he would want to use a fireball right now or whether he just says okay with Flame Strike. But as you mentioned, some of the cards you're afraid of post Lunacy are these board generation cards, right? So this Flame Strike is pretty important to stay in RDU's hand as a security measure against that kind of push.
Yeah, which is why I really like the way that he's gone about it. You do have to respect small minions against Deck of Lunacy just because there are so many buffs that can come down, even when Survival of the Fittest is not a threat, which it isn't right now with the way that Jarla has discounted his deck first. There's still Blessing of Authority, Power Infusion, just all manner of things that can end up coming down and buffing up tiny minions. So he had to pay attention to the board with some regard, did it with Combustion, which and then used the Fireball to end up corrupting the Ring Toss and get maximum value out, which I do like.
Jarla now going for that Cloak of Shadows, which means RDU's options are limited, although RDU's options are limited anyway, since he just has no cards.
Right. Interesting.
Ooh.
Incanter's Flow is kind of cool. I feel like Wildfire almost kind of gets there at this point. Like, if you could just Wildfire and ping away at your opponent.
Yeah, and I'm also staring at Counterspell. Because RDU has so few cards, why not make him have one less?
No. It's if you're playing a secret, it's rigged fair game, surely. Like, you have stealth. The only way you take damage is if it's yeah, sure.
The Mana Biscuit doesn't really get him anywhere this turn unless he just wants to refresh next turn. I like the Counterspell. RDU's going to have 3 cards and it'll effectively make him have 2. Like, that sounds worthwhile to me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I was leaning towards, in the end, Incanter's Flow and the Rigged Fair game, but I think that just ends up being too greedy, right? Like, the greedy part of my brain just wants me to draw as many discounted cards as possible. But I think in the end, ensuring that if Mask is there, it does not go off is the best way of doing it, which is what Jarla did as best as possible with the Rigged Fair game and the counterspell. It just so happened that RDU hit draw into Mask, which ended up being the absolute dream here, and he now finds himself a single damage off lethal to end this game.
I don't want to be that guy, but the Siphon Soul's still in hand, Subtle.
True, you're not wrong.
There's no heal. He could have been wrong on 10.
And it's not even like after the fact results oriented as a call, because you did mention it before the fact. Yeah. Like, you did throw it out there, so yeah. It's a fair point. Oh, the spell damage. Beautiful.
That's just game. RDU is going to take the first game here with a nod. It looked a little bit shaky just for a turn or so there, especially with that stealth, but the refreshing spring water off the top got the job done. But you did see what that counterspell would have achieved if it was almost any draw except spring water, because there just wasn't anything else for RDU to really get done that turn. So big win for him there in game number 1. And again, it's just that Siphon could have just been played to remove a minion and go on from there. At many points, I think, throughout that game, there were targets, and it was only 2 mana. So tough one there for Jarla to take a loss with, but it does mean we are going to move swiftly on to game number 2.
Yeah, and again, I do just want to go back to that last decision and think it was absolutely right for Jarla to play the counterspell. Even though I was initially disagreeing with it, I think it was spot on, and as you pointed out, if the second card draw card was not drawn in the Refreshing Spring Water, then RDU's hand would have had to either test it for counterspell with Flame Strike and then drawn 1 card with Cram Session, at which point Mask wouldn't have been playable anyway, right? Or just ripped the Cram Session and got his card draw counterspelled, and then not been able to draw the Mask regardless. So I think protecting the Rigged Fair game with both the stealth and the counterspell was the best way to go about it. RDU just had a little bit of a fortunate draw there to be able to get himself out of it with the Mask of Cthulhu.
Yeah, otherwise, of course, that stealth would have guarded him, got Rigged Fair game, and then suddenly maybe the Librams of Hope do turn up, and then the game looks wildly different there, but that is the way it goes sometimes. So it looks like Jarla is now guaranteed to be the leader at the end of the week, yeah? So even if he doesn't make it into that, first place spot to bank as many points as possible, he is still looking fantastic. And honestly, Sottle, it doesn't even surprise me at this point. I get more surprised if Jarla isn't at least in the top 8, doesn't make top 4, because we're so used to him just doing it week in, week out, season after season in Grandmasters.
It's just staggering consistency at this point, and he's really just planted a flag in the European region and just in the world region as a whole, of just saying this is what you have to do to be considered a top-level Hearthstone competitor. And it's not just do it once. It's not just spike one tournament. It's not even just, become the world champion one year. It's consistently be on everyone's top 5 list year after year after year for 3 or 4 years, right? Like, that's what Jarla has done, and that's what really establishes you in a card game as an all-time great, because you can't win everything in a card game. It's just not possible. As much as Blyze and Pavel and Tice and Zixo and Super JJ and various people throughout time have had these win streaks, you just can't win everything in a card game, whether you're the best player or not. It's just that level of consistency over time. I think we herald those streaks from some of the players that I talked about a little too heavily in comparison to someone like Jarla, who isn't streaky, and that's kind of what you want to be in games, right? Like, he's just consistently great, and just because he doesn't have a world championship or a string of consecutive tournaments to his name does not mean that percentage-wise, win rate-wise, he has not been one of the best players in the world for the past 5 years, because he absolutely has. Yep,
his name is just always there, but we are already into our game number 2. RDU going to get off with another early font of power again, and with a relatively good selection of minions. Both players also having that refreshing spring water, so the card draw is there. But again, Subtle, with that deck of Lunacy on offer, is this something we're going to see, especially with the Incanter's Flow? So is the path here coin Lunacy Incanter's Flow, in your opinion, Subtle? Is that the way?
Again, depends on amount of pressure being presented here from RDU, but this is a dormant minion coming down, so I expect it will be. I think it's only the fact that there's a refreshing spring water in the hand that made that an easy decision, by the way, because I think otherwise you have to consider what a refreshing spring water looks like in that hand, going coin Deck of Lunacy into refreshing spring water on the following turn, but Jarla already has that option, so I think having the Incanter's Flow available is pretty powerful here.
Jarla taking his time working out exactly what he wants to do, because it is also not even just a given that he has to Deck of Lunacy, right? Like, there's no rule that say, well, if you have it on 3 or 4, you have to play it. He could just play a more, loosely honest game of Mage Mirrors here and just go for, say, Incanter's Flow into whatever, then, play off the Refreshing Spring Water next turn to cycle. But he does have that very powerful option of Lunacy, but we'll see if he goes for it or not.
I feel like you have to, though, right? Because he's submitted it. Like, he's playing Mage, he has Lunacy in his list, and he doesn't have an anti-Mage tech, right? And he must have been expecting other people to be playing Mage. So when you put all of those facts together, he has to believe that having Deck of Lunacy in his deck is of benefit in the Mage matchup, and therefore, in this spot where you have a very clean setup for it, all of your 7-drops in your deck, Refreshing Spring Water in hand, very little pressure being represented on the board, Incanter's Flow in hand. This is the dream, isn't it? Like, I can't imagine a better spot for Deck of Lunacy to come down if it weren't to come down here.
Job's done.
Meanwhile, RDU, in all the resources in the world here, this 4/5 is about to pop out of Dormant next turn as well. Obviously won't have much, if any, impact with its Battlecry effect on the board, but doesn't matter, it's a 4/5.
Positioning again, by the way. I feel like RDU is the player I'm calling out the most on this.
I was just about to say the same.
Not only is there a 2/1 in the middle right now as opposed to a Dormant minion, but when the Dormant minion wakes up, it's a 4/5, so you want the 4/5 to be in the middle and not one of the 1 health minions. But
right.
Yeah. More details.
Like, no, I knew he was going to ping it. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, probably yes, but there's still no upside to.
No, I'm with you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Are you going to keep this turn nice and simple? Fireball to the face, push an additional 1. There's another fireball there into ping and then mask next turn.
Oh, insta slam. Oh, Rancor as well. Oh, that's so much armor gain. Just whenever he wants it. 4 2/2s plus Rancor for 2 mana.
You could even do all that this turn and still brain freeze the rest of the 4/5 off, right? Like, why not? Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Clear board going into next turn for the Nagrand Slam. It's pretty strong.
He'll also... Oh, okay, he's just a little bit off. I've got to see if he could whip in the Arcane Intellect as well.
He's going to preserve the board state instead for the sake of less armor. Okay, it's fine.
I would just view that as space that my Nagrand Slam can't take up now.
Yeah, I think so. I think the thinking behind this, right, is if RDU plays minions or plays an Apexis Blast or something, he can just use these to trade cleanly into whatever gets generated, and then all the Nagrand Slam tokens can just go straight face, which is kind of what you want them to do, right? Or on the other side, RDU does not, or he's not capable of generating minions, dispense his turn removing, and then same deal, right? Clear board, Nagrand Slam, all go face.
Oh, yeah. RDU doesn't even want to look. Flame Strike. Oh!
Okay.
Gets it. Okay, big deal, big deal. He doesn't instantly lose.
Does get to continue to play Hearthstone here.
Oh, and Jarla running a little bit dry on good minions here, or good cards, should I say.
Pretty good, though. Stand Power Infusion. I imagine since the Power Infusion costs 0, he might just hold onto it here, because jamming it preemptively is weak to Devolving Missiles. No, he's just going to jam it. Okay. Find this a little surprising.
He's just got faith that the other 1/1s will take the hits.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because obviously you do play around actual sources of damage being removal, you know, combustion and Runed Orb and all that kind of stuff. But if Devolving Missiles were to come out here, you could quite happily just play the Power Infusion for 0 mana on one of the things that got devolved this turn, right? As long as anything stuck to the board, doesn't matter if it's a Blood Imp or a Wisp or whatever else.
Aren't you going to have to do some...
Mask is the big fear. I guess Mask is the big breaking point as to why, like, I'm kind of tunneled on Jarla's offensive thinking, but he's also defending his own health total by doing this. He makes RDU have to have Devolving Missiles and Mask to really do a lot of damage to face this turn. Oh, brutal.
It's also tough, right? Because RDU has to do some planning in that, yes, he can't just leave a board there to potentially get Survival of the Fittest and so on, but he has got a ton of burn in his hand, which if he just chose to say he doesn't have it, then maybe just stacking burn the next 2 turns would have just been, will just be enough to win the game.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a tough call to make, though.
You just want to start clocking with the Libra of Justice? Just push the extra 1 a turn?
It's very relevant, isn't it?
It's kind of relevant, yeah.
And with Devolving Brain Freeze, does he actually need the Libram to be a Libram?
RDU wants Ice Barrier here as a matter of urgency. Misses it, though, completely. That's such a big deal. Counterspell Netherwind is what he's ended up with. So now Lethal is actually being threatened on the other side of the board. If he got an Ice Barrier, he could just so happily ignore this board state. The Treant tokens are 2 drops, I believe, for the sake of Devolving Missiles coming out here.
Nothing adds up either. He can't even say, okay, I'll kill 1 and Fireball face or something, right?
Right.
So he has to just go for a Pexis Blast. It's the... Oh! Okay, that'll do.
Yeah, as far as RDU can see, that's a very good outcome, but not really going to matter too much against that Libram of Justice, which Jarla is immediately rewarded for holding on to. Draws a useless card, which he uses to check Counterspell with.
You will get this Netherwind, though. Maybe the Netherwind portal will be enough to hold off just for now. He does have a Pexis Fireball next turn, but again, it's just not quite there.
It's unlikely, right? Because Jarla will test again. He's smart enough to know, yeah, he's going to chuck out another spell here just to test. Yeah, there's the Netherwind. Now he drops the Libram of Justice. He can use this to clear up.
And this was my point earlier. Not saying particularly RDU did anything wrong. It's just when he did the Mask turn, he could have chosen after seeing the Devolving to say, you know what, I can't realistically clear all of this, so I'm going to pretend there isn't any buffs and just start shipping all of this face damage. Because there's so much of it.
What to do? What to do?
Jarla spending this long, I think, considering the implications of what taking 1 damage to his face compared to pushing 1 extra, compared to trading with one of his 2/2s, compared with having a Brain Freeze in his hand still, like all of those things running through Jarla's mind, just the tiniest details in whether or not he can get himself over the line in this game, because it looks very one-sided right now, but it is balanced on a knife's edge right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's Runed Orb for Ice Barrier, right? Like, that exists.
Yep.
And I think there's no harm in him starting with that. He can still Apexis Blast afterwards. He can still Shooting Star. I think 1 Runed Orb here would be a good start here for RDU.
He would be short of the full clear now in most worlds, though, if he doesn't hit the Ice Barrier. Because he needs to go Runed Orb, Shooting Star, Ping to clear, or use the Apexis Blast. Yep. Oh! Brutal.
Ouch. It's playing around Devolving Missiles. It can only get bigger.
This area is off limits.
Oh! Barricade! Somewhere in a distant world, Jon Westberg has just given a quiet fist bump. And yes, validated. Jon Bray's terrible tech was good all along. I knew it.
Jarla just working out whether this brain freeze matters anymore. We could just use it to just get away this 1-1 so there are no shenanigans coming on. Gonna happen.
Kind of into it.
Because he just needs, and the thing is, this 1-1 will kill one of the minions with a brain freeze from RDU, right? So why not just keep your 4 health minions as alive as possible going into the next turns? You only need one of them to hit.
Yeah, I'm kind of into it. Jarla's done a great job, by the way, of like preserving resources for as long as possible. We've seen him holding on to like quasi-useless spells to deal with things like Counterspell and Netherwind Portal. He's also continuing to hold on to this Fell Guardians, even though it's actually a decent board presence, because he knows it can pair immediately well with so many things in his deck that he can pick up. The fact that it costs 0.
Oh, Cramp Session.
His deck's just too clunky, though. Like, how do you really explode from this position?
I'm not going to lie, I forgot there are actually 0 Incanters been played from RDU's side. I actually always assume there's at least 1.
This is straight up probably the unluckiest game of Mage we've seen so far, right? Like, 0 Incanters flows, Apexis Blast summoning a 1-1 and so on. Like, this just has not been it for RDU.
Yeah, it's not. And that is going to be it. From this game, though, Jarla going to take the victory and even this series up. And it was still a tough one. There were many chances there for RDU with a few different outcomes. Mainly that Ice Barrier you spoke about coming off the ring toss to really change this game round. Because the Ice Barrier coming off ring toss means that RDU could have got one of those turns I spoke about earlier of just saying, I have so much burn. Let's just spend some mana and get it aimed at the face, right? Just get this played and out of the hand. But he never really got that and kind of whiffed on it on that ring toss, which is very unlikely.
Extremely unlikely, yeah, and it goes back to the point of saying that RDU did kind of low roll there. Now, let's not forget he did get an Earth Elemental a couple of days ago to basically solo a game against Swids in the group stages. But yeah, a lot of things went against him there. Obviously, Jarla hitting a very strong opener, both with Lunacy opening hand, Springwater opening hand, and then picking up the Incanter's Flow to go along with all of that as well. He did not have his own Incanter's Flow. He did get the Blood Herald off the Apexis Blast, which is a 1 in 64, I believe, and then you got 80% to get a given secret off of ring toss once it's corrupted. So all of those things lining up against you, I think, yeah, RDU is fairly justified in feeling hard done by in that particular game.
And I'm just loving all these Jarla stats. It's like, yeah, we like Jarla because he is proven very good at the game. As you can see, the only GM in any region to reach every available quarterfinal. Like I said, you just expect him to be there at this point.
I mean, I hope this goes on. I hope there's just, like, for every game Jarla plays, if he goes all the way through up until the final, there's just a new fact about how awesome he is, because that would make me happy.
I just like it if, like, there's someone in the back going, oh, we're running out. What soup does he like? What kind of soup? It's like, it just carries on getting more obscure points about Jarla.
I bet he even has incredible taste in soup, Raven. I mean, honestly, what will that guy do wrong at this point? But yeah, he's had 2 Lunacy games, and I think this is a point worth harping on as well, is that Jarla has clearly put a lot of faith into Deck of Lunacy, even tweeting on Friday after he qualified for top 8, saying that he was expecting one of the Lunacy gamers to take the whole thing down, and really has planted his flag to say, like, this is correct, it's supposed to be in your deck, at least for Specialist, like whether things change going into next week when we move over to Last Hero Standing, whether we even get to see Mage play a single game of Hearthstone when we move back into a format where a ban is available, who knows? But certainly Jarla has put a lot of stock into the Deck of Lunacy so far.
And we are getting into this next game, but I just want to say, I can't wait for Last Hero Standing, because what if we just get, like, a Mage Sniper deck, right? And it's like, yeah, you play that Mage, and then there's just a super hard counter being played. Because that's one of the joys of Last Hero, right? You can have at least something in the lineup as a built counter.
It is. The problem is, like, you need a Last Hero Standing deck to go, like, 1.5 wins, right? Like, it's all well and good having a deck to snipe Mage, but that deck also has to be able to have a chance of beating something else to be, like, a net positive for
Should we just offer 1.5 wins for beating a Mage?
Yes!
Is that how we should do it?
Solved. That is the best format idea I've ever heard in my life, Raven. You've done it.
Your wins,
cracked
listen, your wins equal points based on what you face. So it's like 1,000,000 points to beat a priest, right? Because I think we can all agree. And then weirdly 1.5 to be a mage. But let's dive straight back into this game. Both players having Incanter's Flow and Font of Power. It is a fairly even game so far.
Well, you say that, but then you have to have a quick peruse over Jarla's hand, and it is hideous, to say the least. Like, that is way too much mana to have in your hand as mage. Like, you can't even really get enough cards out of your hand to really then pop off with Cram Session to refill your hand with cheap things, because what cards do you even get out of your hand in the first place? Like, this is just gross.
I'm just confused, though, because all I know is on turn 5, Mage gets a good 5-drop. That's all I've heard, right? Isn't that what happens?
True. That is
There are some good 5-drops there.
Okay. Combustion is about as kind as his deck could have been to him this turn, clearing up the board for that turn 5 now. But yeah, Jarla is going to be stuck just playing one mid-rangey minion per turn now for quite some time, whereas RDU's hand is looking much more magey, Raven. It looks like it's doing the things that this deck is intended to do with Refreshing Spring Water and Cycle, cheap minions, spell damage, activating Cram Session, all that good stuff.
Yeah. For a second, I thought you were going to say mangy. I was like, wait, what? How's he going to work this in? This is going to be impressive. But yes, the Refreshing Spring Water to draw a few extra cards, refresh that mana, and even Rigged Fair Game is available now. I've started mixing these up for no reason. Ring Toss is available, in which you might pick Rigged Fair Game, we'll see.
Seems unlikely with the minions still hanging around on board here. Wonder if he's tempted by the Oasis ally pick here.
I'm tempted by Mirror Entity. There's double font been played, right?
He might Mirror Entity. He might also Ice Barrier, because there's just a very annoying source of 3 damage on the other side of the board right now that he can't deal with. So just playing Ice Barrier means that if that attacks him, he actually heals for 5 as opposed to taking 3 damage.
Yeah, he did go for the Entity, though.
Okay.
Which I do like. Jarla's not exactly been playing minions on curve, and there was a turn, obviously, where he did that combustion into the secret. It doesn't mean he doesn't have low-cost minions, but it feels like there's at least something a bit bigger in there, and we can see there's 5-drops galore for Jarla, so if he just drops one of these minions into this turn, Ardu's going to feel very happy indeed.
Yes, especially since the backup secret is Counterspell as well, so it's not even like you can just go like Aegwin, Brain Freeze, kill your opponent's Aegwin. That's just going to get counterspelled and your opponent's going to be left in the same spot. Same deal with Ethereal Conjurer, just no way to then answer it on the other side. What do you do? Like, honestly, what combination of 2 secrets is Jarla's hand even good against right now? Like, I don't think he has a good play against any combination of 2 secrets.
Yeah, it's just not good, is it?
No.
Now he gets the news. And now he gets the extra bad news. It's like when someone says to you, do you want the good news or the bad news first? You say, okay, the good news. Well, there isn't actually any, it's just 2 bad news. Another Cram Session means RDU is just going to keep this draw train going.
+1 Devolving Missiles. I was going to ask the question, but I decided to wait and find out instead. I actually didn't know at what point in the order of operations the Devolving Missiles went into the Key Warden, but obviously before the secret phase, meaning that the Devolving Missiles was put into the spell burst before it was copied.
Oh, this is painful. Minions cleaned up, RDU retains the board, and just deals an extra 5. It's almost like he cast a Pexis Blast.
Yep. Pretty disgusting. And this is exactly what I was talking about, right? Like, Jarla would have potential with most hands to just absolutely pop off this turn with the Refreshing Spring Water, but his hand is just too clunky to really have high expectations of what he can achieve this turn.
Okay, Brain Freeze, good pickup there. He can kill off the ghoul.
Sorry, why is Flesh Eating Ghoul at 3-3 now? There's so many of these weird, like, core set changes that are just totally irrelevant and I still don't know about. They keep surprising me.
It still shocked me. I saw Defender of Argus in Battlegrounds today, and it still surprised me, even though I know it was buffed.
Yeah.
Like, my brain knows that. I read it, I have seen it, and it was still like, oh yeah, it's a 3-3.
Yeah, it just looks wrong, right?
Yeah.
It's when you take like a one club footballer, like when you take like Alan Shearer and put him in a Man United shirt, and it's oh no, that looks horrible. What are you doing?
Pretty relevant player choice there, Sal. I'm impressed. Was that on purpose?
It was, yeah. I literally thought for like 10 seconds, like, I know he doesn't get many sports ball references. How can I make him understand this?
What to do? What to do?
This just looks like a reasonable mask turn. And of course, we can see there's just double fireball for RDU, but in terms of Jarla's side, I think this is just as good as it's going to get, right? Get the mass damage in, or at least mostly, push an extra 6. Jarla has double fireball as well, effectively sets up his own lethal, but it's not going to be enough. Just too slow to keep up there. RDU takes the game, the double fireball goes out, the amazing from Jarla, and the little smirk from Mr. Radu.
And I'm not going to tell you what Jarla mouthed as those fireballs were pointed at his face, but I can promise you it was not in Czech. It was very, very clearly in English, and he was very clearly not pleased with the way that game went. And yeah, I mean, nothing doing at that point, right? He kept Font of Power, which I think is fine on the play, and he just got given absolutely miserable minions. He just got a handful of 5 drops, 6 drops. Mordresh even got the 10 drop in there as well, and just had absolutely no ability to play the game from that point. Scrapped away, did the best that he possibly could, but RDU's hand was just too smooth, too clean, too quick, and got over the line too efficient.
I think, not that I want to, but if you look at this, I think to even add to the frustration here, this minion dealt an additional 5 to Jarla from the devolve, and if you look, yes, RDU had the double fireball for lethal, but if he had 5 more health, he'd be safer, and Jarla actually ended up in a relatively okay spot the turn before he died. So you can just imagine, like, look, there's 12 exactly. He puts his opponent relatively low with a double fireball follow-up himself, but it just wasn't enough, and RDU takes it and moves.